Exam stress is one of the biggest factors that can hold people back from performing at the top of their ability in exams. So in today's video, I have got 8 of my top tips to help you minimize exam stress for any exam that you have in the future. So tip number 1, whenever you're in an exam, you have more time than you think. Now, people often say about a mark a minute to go off of. Realistically, in a lot of the maths and science papers, there's a fair few multiple choice questions. They are not going to take you an entire minute to do most of the time. Likewise, you will be surprised how quickly you can write a 6-mark answer in exam conditions. Point number 2, if you open an exam paper and straight away you're like, I've never seen this before, this is really stressing me out, it's really difficult, I don't know what to do. Every other person taking that exam with you is in exactly the same boat. Now, at GCSE and A-level, the exam boards modify the grade boundaries based on the performance. If the entire room of people finds that exam incredibly difficult, the grade boundaries will be much lower for that year. This is why, if you have a look at previous exam grade boundaries, they vary a lot between years, and this is all dependent on whether you have a hard paper, an easy paper, and so on. Number 3, once you get out of that exam hall, there is nothing you can do. There is no point in walking away from that, oh my god, I failed, oh no, this is the end of the world. There's no point in stressing about it. Do as best you can on that paper in that 2-hour time slot or however long it is. Get out that exam hall, forget about it, move on to the next one. If you have to retake it at a later date, absolutely fine. Just learn from your mistakes and prepare better for it when it comes to retaking it. Point number 4 is a fairly straightforward one. Just prepare well for the exam. Now, as I'm sure you've heard a million times, supposedly the best way to revise for an exam is doing little and often for a longer period of time, retesting those topics to make sure you have a good deep understanding of it. Realistically, there'll be a lot of students, especially at the moment, cramming to get last little bits of revision in. The main things I would do to prepare well for an exam is do lots of past papers to be very familiar with the type of questions they will ask you and the style of which they ask you those questions, and have an incredibly good knowledge of the foundations of that topic. Point number 5, doing long cramming revision sessions will probably stress you out. Now, obviously, if it's the day before an exam and you're just going over your notes and making sure you can finalise all the little bits, that is perfectly fine. But to be honest, don't try and just sit down and bang out 4 to 6 hours in one session. Take sufficient breaks every, say, half an hour to an hour. Go outside, go for a walk, listen to some relaxing music, anything you like to do, stretches, breathing exercises, meditation if you prefer. All of these things will help neutralise your stress levels and make sure your mental health stays as good as it can be during these exams. Point number 6, get enough sleep. As I've said this before in previous videos, do not stay up till 1 or 2 a.m. trying to cram all your notes if you've got an exam at 9. If you've got an afternoon exam and you can afford to have a lie-in, if you prefer to work at night, absolutely go ahead. But make sure you get at least 8 hours sleep the day before an exam. Sleep as well is the number 1 factor that helps you retain information that you learnt in that day. If you've just spent 6 hours revising, you want obviously to be able to retain that information. By sleeping, this will be replaying over in your mind, in your brain subconsciously, and you will wake up the next day and you will still have a very good understanding of all the stuff that you learn. Point number 7, there is nothing worse than sitting down and having no idea what you're going to be revising that day. I would highly recommend sitting down and creating a plan of what you're going to do minute by minute if you want to. You could block out an hour slot for this, another hour slot for this, half an hour of this, bit of 20-minute recall of the stuff you've been learning, and setting goals. So you could either say, I'm going to do this for an hour, I'm going to do this for another hour, or you could just say, I'm going to revise this whole topic, but take breaks every 20 minutes. Something like that would be perfect. By doing this, you're not going to get distracted as easily, and your work will be a lot more productive because you know exactly what you're going to be doing. And if you do it well enough, say your exam covers 4 different topics, you could block out an hour or 2-hour slot for each of those topics across 4 days. By doing that, you will know that as long as you just stick to the plan, you will cover all the content you need to. There'll be a bit of time at the end of it for a little bit of recall, going back over stuff, and you will not get stressed out because you haven't done enough or you haven't covered all the content and stuff like that. And finally, my point number 8, you will never work more effectively than when you are in that exam hall. I don't know what it is, whether it's the exam conditions, you have to be in silence, you've got invigilators looking over you at all times. Once you open that paper, you go into like a different zone. You will get your head down, you will be surprised at how quickly you will write, how quickly answers will come to you. And this kind of bounces off my point number 1 about don't worry about the time that you have in the exam. And honestly, sometimes I wish I could do my day-to-day studying or revising in exam conditions, in an exam hall, with people watching over me, making sure I stay silent, because I would get all my work done in honestly about half the time. But overall, I understand exams can be very stressful times. Work really hard over the exam period, and you can have the break that you deserve over the summer. But thank you very much for watching. So good luck to anyone that has exams coming up in the future, and I hope these tips can help you reduce your exam stress.